Welcome to the Ending Sexploitation podcast, where we decode sexual harm and provide you with active solutions. I'm your host, Kaylee McNamara. Well, hey everyone, thanks for joining us again. I am again joined by my incredible colleague, Dani Pinter from the Law Center at the National Center on Sexual Exploitation. How's it going, Dani?
Hey, going great, Haley. So excited to talk with you again today.
Glad to talk to you too. I'm jealous of your sunshine as we're recording in different places. It is so cold in Washington, D.C.
What? In April?
I know, it's terrible. It's terrible.
Oh.
I'm over it. So I'm going to fly down and be with you on a beach, I hope very soon. But today we're going to dive into a few different topics. There's been a lot of interesting articles coming out this week that I think we can look at. And a connection, I think, is we're looking at how technology shapes not just what we see online, but also the choices that we end up making, whether that's
Yeah.
spiraling into even really harmful behavior or things that uh, just seem creepy. So this is gonna just be a rabbit hole that we'll go down together. I don't know, Dani, did you have a chance to see this Guardian article that came
Yes.
out?
Oh my
And
gosh.
for those who are only listening, we just pulled it up. It's called "I Didn't Start Out Wanting to See Kids. Are Porn Algorithms Feeding a Generation of Pedophiles or Creating One?" What did you think? This is a wild article. It kind of goes, it's from the UK, so it's talking about
Mhm.
their rates of men who are being arrested for viewing online child sexual abuse materials. Yeah. Any general thoughts on this article? It was really shocking to me.
It was. It was disturbing, but it also wasn't that shocking. I felt like very much validated all the anecdotal things we had seen, people, whether it be experts, which I guess that's not really anecdotal, but the experts we work with saying essentially what this said, like it multiple times in this article, they had law enforcement saying the phrase essentially, there is an unambiguous link between pornography use and this ultimate child pornography use, CSAM use, child sexual abuse material use. And we've heard that time and time again here from experts in the United States. There's just no doubt in the minds of experts dealing with perpetrators of child sexual abuse material that there's this connection with child pornography. There's this connection with mainstream pornography use, and it escalating.
Mhm.
We have so many good friends in this movement talking about this escalation, and it reminds me of so many things over the years. Like it reminds me of Ted Bundy, right? His famous
Mm.
interview before his execution, where he talked about pornography use leading to him ultimately being a serial killer of women, and how basically the escalation of using pornography caused him to view women as not people, as non-humans. And it also makes me think of our president, or now retired former president Patrick Truman,
I
who
was thinking
was
about
at
that too.
like his origin story of coming to Nikosi was he was the head of CEOS, the Child Exploitation Obscenity Division at the Department of Justice, I think in the 90s. And, was prosecuting these most terrible crimes and was opening letters. He was receiving hundreds of letters from men in jail and also from like the wives of men in jail and a victim talking about how pornography use led these perpetrators to ultimately abuse children or view child sexual abuse material. So it was very validating in that sense in a depressing way, but also obviously just super shocking and eye-opening too to hear the words of some of these men. It was so kind of chilling and human to hear like the one quote of, I didn't start out looking for this. Like I wasn't attracted to children. I wasn't looking for this. And next thing I know, hours later, I'm now viewing this most heinous material. It's just
Mhm.
unbelievable.
And it's crazy, actually, as you were talking about Mr. Truman's time in the Department of Justice, I thought you were going to tell a different story I remember he was telling me about they would do raids on people who were viewing child sexual abuse material, and this was early days of the internet, so it was still a lot of, physical materials like magazines
Mhm.
and physical printed abuse material, and they raided this guy who was also a hoarder, and he describes walking into the room and there's just stacks and stacks of magazines up to the ceiling, and it was a literal time capsule picture of this man's escalation in reverse,
Escalation.
because at the very top it was child sexual abuse material, some of the most violent and terrible things, and as you went down at the bottom it was just mainstream adult content, and you could see a real picture in real time of that
Wow.
escalation. So
Holy
crazy.
cow.
But I think this is the kind of thing that we hear it from, law enforcement, people
Yeah,
on the grounds doing it, but it isn't really part of the mainstream conversation around
yeah.
pornography, around adult pornography, because I think many people view it's almost too much. It's too intense to talk about this connection,
Mhm.
because obviously not every person who views adult pornography escalates in this way, but we do know that there's brain science that shows that the very the typical users who are, well, no, maybe not typical, but the high volume users who are regularly watching this material do escalate, that they, whether that's into more hours of consuming content or more violent material, maybe more shocking or degrading material, incest themes, et cetera, and for some of them even into wanting to act out abuse and exploitation in real life, and then for another subset it's into child materials. So it is part of a trend that is in the research, but I think people just feel nervous talking about it because it's almost too intense.
Yeah, I think that's right, and I mean, I think the reality is so many people are consuming this content so readily available that it would be too uncomfortable to consider yourself as part of the problem, right? Like, so many people, I think, might be immediately convicting, and to your point, it's not their personal experience, right? They are not escalating into criminal content or maybe so extreme violence, so this they're not necessarily willing to believe that this happens.
Mhm.
Although, and I don't know, but it does seem to me from the evidence that there's always some level of escalation and or desensitization. So even if
Right.
you're not going into this place of criminal content or really, really extreme content, you're getting desensitized in some way, right? And I think that reflects even in the experiences of young men not being able to have real, in-person sex because of the pornography use. That's a type of desensitization, right? Because it's just not exciting enough, or it's not niche enough to meet what they've now their brain and their body is now used to and conditioned to expect. So there seems to always be some kind of
Mm.
escalation one way or the other if you're regularly using this content. And it the other thing about this conversation in this article to me is it made so poignant for me the societal effects of pornography use, because I do think for so many people, they their reaction to criticism of pornography is, this is harmless, this is between me and myself, an adult, this is private activity of adults. But the truth is, it isn't, right? At some point, particularly when it's this, accessible, and unregulated, it becomes society's problem, and we see that with, as this article demonstrates, the alarming rise in child sexual abuse, and there's a couple things I wanna say. One is, this article wasn't even addressing perpetrators who are acting out against children. It
Right.
was addressing perpetrators who are consuming child sexual abuse material, but that means there is an explosion in demand for that
Mm.
content. So that creates a demand to sexually abuse children by the worst kinds of actors, right? So you're not even talking about pedophiles, you're just talking about opportunistic criminals who will be incentivized to create child pornography to feed this very large demand. It's in demand and they can charge more because of the risk involved, right? Like,
Mm.
because
Mhm.
it's risky, that makes this very profitable. And another thing this article is kind of expressing is because there's such high volume numbers now, law enforcement is very overwhelmed. So that also creates a lower risk for the perpetrators of getting caught when there's now they can hide in the crowd of offenders, which is just really frightening. And then this also makes me think of, societal effects in even for violent pornography, because this article kind of touched on UK trying to address the issue of strangulation as a pornography theme. And there was that really shocking research article that came out, I think, about United States college students, right? American college students who, what was it? Do you remember this? It was like 1 in 4 college students
Yeah.
reported that their first sexual encounter. So this is not a long-term trusted relationship where they're experimenting. This is they met someone and having sex for the first time and were strangled for the first
Yeah.
time. Like that is eye-opening to how normalized a very extreme and very dangerous thing. Strangulation and sex can be deadly. So for that to be so common that 1 in 4 women are experiencing that in their first sexual encounter is just insane to me. And I think that's part of just what this article revealed is that it's not just, a harmless, victimless issue. It really plays out in society because nobody can watch this content and not have it influence their their belief system and their behavior, even at an interpersonal level, of how they interact with other people in their life.
Yes, absolutely, and those societal effects are just such a ripple effect in
Yeah.
all of these different areas and so many more, and we can even see in this article, they talk about that escalation factor, and one person says, "I see men who have gone down that call on what I call an escalating pathway." And there's another quote from one of the men who they interviewed for this article that I have pulled up on my laptop that I can read. So he was caught with child sexual abuse materials on his platform. Like the police knocked on his door and he said, quote, "I knew I had looked at lots of porn, but I genuinely did not think that there was anyone underage in there. But they said they found 200 illegal images." Which is so crazy. And there's other quotes from men. I think that's part of what makes this article so fascinating is interviewing some of the men who have
Yeah.
perpetrated this form of abuse. Another person said, "My reaction should have been to turn off the computer when I was offered images of young girls, but you are in such a bizarre place. You are out of control." Basically. And another guy said, "The police never found a single search for images of children. It was all from clicking through links, what the
The
algorithms were
algorithm.
offering me. Porn
The
sites have a button that says,
algorithm.
'See like this.'" And he says, "I was desensitized. I looked at so much teen porn." And then there is a statistic in there, about 50%. Yeah, this is it. That said more than 50% of those who admitted to watching online child abuse said that they were not seeking those images when they were first exposed to them. Now, of course, some of those people went on to search from them, but that first experience of watching a child be abused uh, and deriving gratification from it was not something that they were searching for.
And I
Just
mean,
so crazy.
it's so and to think about, like, the mainstream porn industry, like Pornhub particularly defending teen porn, right? Like, teen porn is their
Yes.
most popular category. They defended it and defended it and said it doesn't mean underage, it means 18 and 19-year-olds. And it's like, even if you buy that, the problem is this desensitization, okay?
Mhm.
You're liking 18-year-olds, and then you want 17-year-olds, and then you want 16-year-olds, and then you the juxtaposition of defending teen porn while also refusing to age verify the people in the videos. So now you're literally capitalizing on the most popular category being teens, 18 and 19-year-olds, but you're not making sure they're actually 18 or 19?
Right.
And then you have this guy consuming 200 he's got 200 images of under 18s. It's like, that is unbelievably reckless behavior by this industry. And it was also interesting to note that in the article, Pornhub came to the UK to fight against their age verification laws. I mean, they that it's
Yeah.
unbelievable.
Yeah, unbelievable. The fact that Pornhub is willing to talk about this issue at all, they should be so quiet because for those who aren't familiar, and we're going to have to do a deep dive into the issue of Pornhub, that's its own topic, but they've been caught hosting child sexual abuse materials, sex trafficking materials, other non-consensual content. And so it is also not surprising to hear that a person can be deep into the pornography algorithm on even mainstream websites and be exposed to child sexual abuse
Yeah.
uh, is very
Of
much,
course.
very
Of
much
course
true.
they would be. That's the thing, and, I mean, I do find this issue of the algorithm so fascinating because, you still have platforms like X that allow hardcore porn and don't verify age. I mean, of course, there's gonna be minors on there, of course.
Of
Of
course.
course there
Yeah,
is. I mean, it's I mean, you're basically
it's there.
accepting that. Yeah. As a platform, you're
I've
willing to
I've
just
seen it.
accept.
Horribly. I've been unintentionally exposed to child sexual abuse materials on X. It's there. And I immediately report, block, remove, but
It's
it's there.
despicable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the
It
thing is, like, these companies, these tech companies are just willing. I mean, that's the uncomfortable truth. They're willing to just
They
accept that
accept
there's
it.
CSAM on their platform. Yeah, they're fine with it, honestly. We do have to confront that they are willing to accept a certain amount of child pornography on their platform as just, collateral damage. I'm not saying
Mhm.
they love CSAM and want it on there. They're just willing to accept it. And they're not willing to pay a single dollar to keep it off. Like the cost of keeping it off, they're not willing to pay. They're just like, yeah, we're should we lose out on money and spend money to keep this off or just accept there's going to be CSAM on the platform? They are actively choosing accept CSAM on the platform and the profits that go with that. And we as society have got to confront that. Are we okay with that? Because,
Mm,
we just had the dirty dozen and that's what this all comes down to. When these platforms say that they must have immunity, it's to protect that exact business model of just accepting the collateral damage that their platforms cause as a cost of doing business to society. I mean, not no cost to them. It's to
right.
us.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's completely a choice. It's completely a
Yeah.
choice. The technology exists to proactively scan for it. Maybe have a little bit more friction on the front end for someone who's trying to upload videos, which would reduce their engagement. And so they're not willing to make any kind of trade-off in order to stop child sexual abuse material from being on their platform. And like you said, it's happening on these mainstream pornography sites and also on social media. There was a 2021 study, it was a survey of 16 and 17-year-olds, and it found that most of them have been exposed to pornography through social media, like 63%.
Wow.
Um, and so and it's
And if you think
happening everywhere.
about
So on the pornography sites and on social media, adult content and child abuse content mix. Like where one
yeah,
is, the other shows up.
of course. Because and if you think about the algorithm and the way the algorithms work, right? Their word association, they're picking up patterns, and you combine that with the reality of escalation. Like, of course,
Mhm.
how else? I mean, truly, if one of these pornography websites is not rigorously rooting out CSAM, which we know they were not doing, and likely most of them still are not doing, like setting aside Pornhub, let's just think about a big mainstream porn site. Are they rigorously ensuring that every single person is an adult? Okay, if they're not, then their algorithm is going to naturally push someone along the escalation train. That's how algorithms work. So you're basically
Mhm.
guaranteeing that these algorithms are going to serve you up more and more extreme version of what you liked. So if you liked teen porn, you're going to be served up CSAM almost as an inevitable conclusion.
Yeah, absolutely. And the article here, it says for years evidence has been building that extreme material is too easily available to first-time viewers. served to them by the powerful algorithms that drive porn sites. In 2021, research from Dr. Fiona Farah Gray, who has spoken at our CEASE summits
Mm.
before in Washington, D.C., found that 1 in every 8 titles on the front pages of the most popular porn sites showed sexual violence against women and girls. They also found that videos tagged as teen were more likely to be linked to violence. Yeah, and there is a lot of research on that too, that, when you're viewing, what you often first see is sexual violence, and that the most violence, I mean, 99% of the violence is directed towards women, but especially content where it's focused on the person being young, it is really
Yeah.
focused on sexual violence, which is just so disturbing. And like you said, the way the algorithms work, what do you think that interest is going to be feeding? Where does that lead?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the results are pretty clear. It's interesting to I had some thoughts on this article because I think it is acknowledging a really real trend of the links between adult pornography use and child sexual abuse material demand, the marketplace
Mm.
growing there. But there's also I think it's just also important to say that individual responsibility
Yeah.
of the abusers has to also always remain paramount. Like, there is a
Yeah.
risk of abusers retrofitting their own motivations and trying to say, "Oh, like,
I'm a
I was
victim of the
tricked, I was
system.
tricked." Yeah. So, but I think, if we are intelligent about it, we can recognize like the individual has full responsibility to if you see an image of a child, you turn off your computer. And if you aren't that person, if you don't do that, you absolutely deserve to have the police knocking on your door. And I think you should have higher penalties than you typically do. But at the same time, because this problem of child sexual abuse material is a skyrocketing problem that every year NCMEC is saying the problem's increasing, it's not getting better, it's
Yeah.
because there's so much demand. And so I think we do as a society need to take on-ramps that are helping perpetuate or feed into child sexual abuse epidemic, like, seriously. So it's a balance there, but Mhm.
Yeah, and I mean, I just wonder why, the police are knocking on the individual's door for possessing CSAM. I mean, and maybe there's just a lot more to the investigations side of this that I don't know, and maybe they aren't detecting CSAM on mainstream platforms, are only catching these guys once they've moved to, like, a known to law enforcement, very criminal platform or something. But, like, why aren't they knocking on these companies' doors? Like, why would a
Mhm.
corporation be able to possess this content without criminal repercussions? That to me is very disturbing. Like, why is the Department of
Yeah.
Justice, and I mean, I think we see some movement in Canada, but why not sooner? I mean, Canada, why are you letting this company host CSAM?
Mhm.
It's in their possession.
Yeah. Yeah, they should be taking proactive steps to remove it, and, yeah, it goes back to at least in America, dirtydozenlist.com, check it out, that was our most recent episode, but it really is so true that the incentives for big tech aren't there because they can't have that kind of accountability because
But
of
they
Section
but
230.
well, and it's like a twofold problem because they can't have civil accountability for 230 prevents individuals from suing to get the justice that they've been denied, maybe criminally or otherwise. But 230 is not supposed to stand in the way of criminal prosecution. So that's the part that really kind of
Mm,
distresses me. It's like not only do we have 230 preventing individuals from taking action, but then you just have what? An unwillingness? An unwillingness of our Department of Justice to actually prosecute companies? Because that's the thing is the Department of Justice could prosecute the company. 230 doesn't stand in the way of prosecutions.
mm,
So, I
right.
mean, I think that's another thing that we need to think about is asking, like, why? They're doing business here in the United States. They're distributing this content in the United States. Our justice system should not allow that? I mean, we could at this point, there's been such an abundance of evidence against these platforms. let's go, you know?
Yes. No, absolutely. There needs to be an appetite for it. There needs to be an
Yeah,
appetite for it. And I think if they started doing that with even just one company, I think that also would be a big incentive shift for many other
yeah.
companies to take it way more seriously. Obviously, there's always going to be bad actors, but some and obviously, so child sexual abuse material, so much of it happens on the dark web, but it doesn't all happen on the dark web. I mean, we've talked even just now about from Pornhub to Twitter or X and all of these other sites. But very often there is like a marketing tactic, honestly, of you need to get someone where they are, which is mainstream sites, and then lead them along the path towards engaging maybe on Telegram, an encrypted site, etc.
Yeah, well, I mean, my understanding is the vast majority of CSAM is on the clear web. It is not on the dark
Yeah.
web. Like, that's
Hmm.
a misconception that it's all on the dark web. The conversations about exchanging it may happen on the dark web is my understanding, or, like, on Telegram. Although, I mean, I wouldn't consider Telegram the dark web, like, these are just
Right.
mainstream
Yeah.
apps. So, of course,
Yeah.
like, now with these sort of, like, sharing apps, that's like a private space, yet mainstream space where they can share, and certainly that's been growing, where these are, like, encrypted messaging. But, yeah, they have to find each other where they are, which is the mainstream web, like you said. But the other thing that has been explained to me, is that the dark web does not have the infrastructure to support, high resolution streaming content. That is
Oh,
not possible
really?
on the dark web. Yeah. So to actually stream any kind of CSAM would have to be on the clear web, which is, the web we all use, the regular
Yeah.
interwebs. Yeah.
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 Well, that's it, I just don't understand why these companies I don't understand why everyone isn't doing more because again, and I know we're talking about such a dark subject, but for every one of these materials, that's a child
Yeah.
who's being exploited and abused in the most horrific ways possible. And then having it shared, which I mean, we've heard from survivors of that about how horrific it is to walk down the street and not know who has seen the worst moments of your life. Like the scale of human suffering that is
Yeah.
happening, these platforms to not be taking it seriously. And sometimes it will make me want to tear my hair out. I was actually in a conversation with a tech executive, I won't name the company, recently, and we were talking about age verification, so keeping kids off of porn sites. And they said, "Oh, well, are you concerned about the privacy aspect of that and like the data gathering?" And I just looked at him and I was like, "You think that these companies don't already have all of their data?"
Course
And
they
the tech
do.
comp the tech exec just kind of like chuckled because I called him on it. I'm like, and
Yeah,
then
because
he
he's like,
was like,
"Oh, yeah, I guess you're a little more intelligent than the most people when I sell that
it's like
lie."
they have so much data. They have so much data. I reached so
What do
there's
you
a
think
new
their
book out.
business model is? Like, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
everyone. Stop for a minute
exactly.
and think about why you would ever be provided free content, okay? These companies are not a charity. Why are they
Mhm.
providing you free content? Because 'Cause they're stealing your data and selling it to advertisers to then advertise to you. Come on. And
Yeah,
they
they
can
know
tell the
everything about
device you're
you.
on, your IP address, where you are.
Yeah.
It's
There is
unbelievable.
a new book out, called Careless People, and I'll need to actually, I have it on my phone. I've been listening to it on Audible, and I asked so the author is Sarah Wynne Williams. She unfortunately I asked her to come on the podcast. She unfortunately could not. I think Facebook is trying to stop her book from getting out there and trying to prevent her from doing some press. My opinion, I won't allegedly, it seems to be the case. She is a former Facebook employee, really high up. She was there from the start, and she basically released this memoir about her experiences there. And in it, she talks, I'm only partway through it, but she talks about the fact that Facebook is gathering so much data and they are tracking our emotions, like down
Yeah.
to, is someone feeling insecure? And one example is if they see a teenage girl deleting multiple selfies on Facebook, they then can serve her up beauty ads because they know that she's maybe
Oh,
feeling insecure
no.
about how she looks. So that's how, in the weeds of our data, even down to what our emotions are at a given point, that big tech and that's not only Facebook. I mean, that's all of these sites
Oh,
are doing that. And
and,
you're
like, we
doing
have
that, but
no
you
de
can't
yeah,
detect child abuse material? You think
I
that
know
that
that.
is too infringing on people's privacy?
I think the
It's
privacy
crazy.
arguments made by big tech are the most offensive thing. The gaslighting, the manipulation of our I mean, they get congressmen really engaged on this issue of privacy.
Mm,
I mean, that is so heinous. These apps, people don't understand, these apps are running on the background on your phone. You think you've
yeah.
X'd out of the app. It's running on background and now just collecting data on everything else you're doing. It's finding out it's watching what other apps you're on, what other activity you're on. Like, for example, you're on Instagram, you swipe out of it, it's still going and watching you go in your fitness app and track your food and your calories, and then it's selling you yeah, like, you kidding me with our we don't even have data privacy laws in the United States. I mean, give me a freaking break.
Mhm.
We don't. We don't even have a
We
federal
don't?
robust
What?
I mean, we have very minor, very,
Yeah.
very, very surface level like, in the UK, I mean, in the EU, in Europe, they have the GDPR, which is, like,
Mhm.
very robust data privacy. We don't have anything like that here.
That's
How
true.
about we
And
pass something like that before you start talking to me about how if somebody could actually hold a tech company accountable, that's gonna be threatening to your privacy, or making sure kids aren't on platforms gonna be threatening to your privacy. I mean, it's sick.
yeah,
It's sick.
it is. It is. This is so great. It's just so unbelievable. And we see here, oh yeah, this is the stat I think that I'd mentioned of kids exposed to porn, teens being exposed to porn through social media, search engines, and then also commercial sites, but mostly 63% on social media, 51% through search engines. So these companies also are part of the pornography industry ecosystem. You know, they are helping people access and find it, and then just creating more of that on ramp. And again, not everyone, obviously, we've dived into like the worst of the worst. Not everyone who views adult pornography goes down to this end of the rabbit trail, but it's the volume of people
Yeah,
that is the concern. It's the societal trend that's the concern, that if you have 10 people versus a million versus 10,000,000, 100,000,000 going down, um, going down this rabbit hole, more and more of those people, a percentage of them are going to end up in these really dark places. And like you had shared, that has real world effects, obviously, not only on kids, but also on law enforcement's ability to even intervene in these crimes. So it's something that really needs to be addressed. And I think it is helpful for us to maybe, as we wrap up, because it's a really tough topic, it's like a really depressing conversation in a lot of ways. What are the solutions? What can be done? I do think that us talking about it is important because people don't want to talk about these issues. Someone asked me about that recently the other day. They're like, why isn't more done? And I think some part of it is that it's really disturbing to think about. And people don't want to
yeah,
spend their time thinking about the most horrible things happening to children and that maybe their neighbor is doing it, um,
right.
by
And I
participating.
yeah, and I I think, you know, everybody's sort of dependence too on the online world and social media is playing into right. Nobody wants to give up their comforts, their habits, their guilty pleasures. And I think on some level, everyone knows that to do the right thing and to protect people, there would be some disruption in that. I mean, but at the same time, like, do we need to be scrolling and having like is less social media and less online um integration in our lives really such a bad thing? I mean, yeah,
Mhm.
I think it's a little bit of all those things. But as far as solutions, I mean, the truth is like we just are going to have to do something. Like we are just going to have to pass some policies that are meaningful. And I think we have to confront the reality that we've allowed this tech industry to grow so big and powerful that the truth is they they are lobbying against this, right? Like they are
Mhm.
funding, and why wouldn't they? The opposition. And I mean, it's just going to take courage. It's going to take courage. It's going to take will, both political will and the will of every American to say this is what we want to. And I think Kristen talked a little bit about this, my colleague at the Dirty Dozen. Like, tech is given the seat at the table every time we negotiate about their own regulations, and we're just going to have to stop that. I'm sorry, but we're just going to have to stop. They can't have a seat at the table of their own of what is going to be the policy regulating their own business, because of course they're going to disrupt that at every turn. And it's
Mhm.
just it's ridiculous to think they want that. They have to, right? Like that's their
Yeah.
responsibility to their company, is to make as little regulation and as meaningless as possible. So like, why are we giving them an automatic veto? Because that's what we would see time and time again. There would be a proposal where they would ask people like us and our friends in this movement about exploitation, and what do you think about this policy? Is it going to work? We'd be like, yeah, it's great. And then they'd ask tech about it, and then
Yeah.
tech would get the final say, and it would completely disrupt and undermine those efforts. So I think we're just going to have to cut that out. I think we should be asking our congress people to stop taking tech money. Just stop
Mm.
taking it. I mean, that's going to be a harsh reality, because I think the numbers are out there that Google pays every single, right? Like every single member of Congress, except I think like Lindsey Graham stopped taking tech money. But
Oh,
like
interesting.
yeah, they pay every single one of them on both sides. Like this is like there's just everybody. They're in everybody's pocket.
Oh my
Why do you think
gosh.
that is? Like, of course, to buy loyalty, to buy favors. And I mean that's how, I'm not condemning any individual like that. Of course, they're all kinds of interests are paying, and donating for the same reason. But I think as constituents, we need to start thinking about these things and talking about those things and pushing back against those things.
Yes, and I think believing that change is possible, and just because something has been this way for a long time does not mean that's how it's going to be in perpetuity.
Right.
So I do think, I think that's very true. We need to just be we as citizens need to be the ones who elevate the standard and who say that the game has to change. And I think one way is obviously through appealing CDA 230, Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, which people can go to dirtydozenlist.com and take an easy action to contact your legislator. So if you're listening to this or watching this on YouTube and feeling like there's nothing you can do, that's at least one step you could do, and it would take literally 60 seconds to do it. And that is going towards a mass scale preventative effect. So that's something you can do. I think there's also, we'll probably get into these other solutions on other episodes, but there are a lot of other percolating solutions to try to stop the on ramp, have less people get sucked down this rabbit hole, get onto this escalation treadmill by preventing especially early pornography use, childhood exposure to pornography, things like age verification of the users, things like device filters where your phone comes with all of these filters on it. They could just by default have them turned on instead of by default having them turned off, or things like app store accountability. There's a lot of other ideas out there as well. And so I want people to just feel encouraged about that because we need, I think, a lot of solutions. There's no one silver bullet, but if we have this mosaic of overlapping concepts where we're pushing tax incentives to be on the side of safety and helping protect especially young people from starting on this slippery, slippery slope, that is a benefit too. Okay,
Yeah,
well,
and I think it's
any
I
parting
what
thoughts from you?
yeah, one last thing I'll just say is, like, everyone should feel very encouraged that we're at this moment in time where we have figured out what the solutions are. I mean, we have the tech the experts on the side of safety saying, like, we know how to fix these problems. We have gotten to a point in this movement where, you listed a bunch of them. Like, we know what can solve the problem. So we've worked that out. There's legislation drafted and out there. So all it is political will. So every single person at home can easily lend their voice, and just to get it across the finish line, right? Like when there's will, when everyone is saying this is what we want, we can make that happen. So
Mm.
that's why, like, going to our action steps, or writing to your congresspeople, all the different things. Nkosi always tries to loop people in, make your voice heard. We can accomplish this. So I think that's very encouraging.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone, so much for joining with us. Remember to rate and subscribe. It would really help us out as we are reinitiating these podcast episodes. If you share it, you can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, where you can watch the visual of our conversation, see some of the articles that we're pulling up. Thank you all so much for joining us in Ending Sexploitation.